Hello, everyone, and welcome to Leaders of Today, Teens to Titans. Today, I want to introduce you to my guest, Bryant Mitchell, an enterprise account executive with AceUp, a leader in the digital coaching space. He is a passionate advocate for personal growth and transformation. Our discussion today will focus on the value of hard work and dedication and how to embrace failure. He's learned through his own experience on teams and coaching youth that whether you win or lose, your team always ends up teaching you so much. So without further ado, let's jump into our conversation. You're listening to Today's Leaders, From Teens to Titans. Hi, I'm Lorraine Connell, a teen leadership coach. I transitioned from teaching chemistry to coaching teens in leadership, helping them realize they can do hard things. We've often believed that leadership is an innate trait, but it's actually a skill that you build and improve. On this show, you'll meet today's leaders who share their teenage experiences, revealing how they developed confidence, direction, and the tools to become the leaders they are now. You'll discover how you or the teens in your life have the potential to become confident leaders, even if it doesn't seem possible. Welcome, Bryant. So glad to have you.
Lorraine, pleasure to be here. Real humbled you asked to speak with me. I'm really a big fan of the work that you're doing. I think it's needed and look forward to this conversation.
Me too. So let's start with having you take a trip down memory lane. Can you share about your background and how your experience as a young teen influenced your journey into leadership?
Well, that's such a wide open
It is.
question. As a kid, I was an athlete and I identified not just as an athlete, I identified as a football player. I mean, it's what helped me really transition from being that proverbial lost middle child who really didn't have a strong identity or personality, was kind of shy and wasn't a great student. All of a sudden, I realized I was good at something. Actually, I was uniquely good at something. My dad and my coaches would tell me I had hands like glue. And I remember I had an older brother, younger brother. We were all very close in age. That became the wind in my sails that I needed at the age of 9 or 10 to really start to become my own person. And I pursued sports and athletics throughout my adolescence into high school. So the really important part of my formative years was being that athlete. And I think looking back now at that experience, I had to hang my cleats up probably at the age of 21 and struggled, honestly, to kind of transition from who I knew myself to be to the man that I am today. But a lot of those people always say this, I get a kick out of it. Sports teach you so many great lessons. I disagree. I think there's the opportunity for sports. It's the perfect environment to teach lots of valuable lessons, but you need great coaches and you need parents. They're all part of the equation that help make sure that you can learn those lessons because they're all around you. And I look back now and realize, man, yeah, I did learn a lot. I developed a lot of good characteristics and attributes, but I'm still learning some of the lessons that I could have learned years ago or should have learned or wished I had learned years ago. So like you, Lorraine, that's why I really enjoy working with kids today in coaching, because it's an opportunity to help them learn the skills and develop the character and the attributes that's going to make them successful in this world, whatever the hell they do, however far that sport takes them or doesn't. The only guarantee with kids playing sports should be that they become better versions of themselves as a result.
Yeah, there's so many things that I want to talk to you about today. And I have been wrestling with myself over this challenge that we face as we're training kids in sports, in the mentality that you can be more at this sport and you can keep going higher and higher. And I love that you said the opportunity in sports. allows for lessons to be learned, but you need a good coach, you need a good team, you need a good experience. And my question is, how do we balance teaching kids life lessons and lessons in sports with wanting to win and be competitive? And there's a conflict, sometimes there's a conflict, but how would you recommend, or do you have ideas on how you continue to build the character of a child or young adult while balancing some of that need to be the best and compete at a competitive level?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it depends on the level that you're at. And I have a 12-year-old and a 14-year-old boy. My 14-year-old's now in high school. He's kind of graduated from dad coaching him, although we still do work out together on occasion. So I cherish that time with him. When you're coaching kids in the fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth grade, sure, you want to win. And absolutely, that makes it a better experience for them all if you can be successful as a team on the field, because there's a lot that goes into that. But if that success comes at the cost of you developing the kids, then I think it's a misguided pursuit. And I know a lot of us, we fall into that trap. And because we're all competitive, and that's why we're involved in the sports. And I think it's what appeals to us. And we're going back as now coaches, reliving our youth through these kids. And I think that can be a slippery slope for some. I haven't been perfect with this either. But the focus always needs to be on developing the kids in the sport that they're playing. I'm not being paid. I'm a volunteer football coach. I'm not a volunteer leadership coach. I think those two go hand in hand, but I am out there to teach the kids the X's and O's of the game. So how to block, how to tackle, how to catch, how to throw. And guess what? If they can't do those things well, we're going to stink. But it's understanding where they're at and helping them progress. So certainly the X's and O's and the technique of the game are kind of the foundation. But if you don't have, and I would encourage every youth coach to really make a point to have some team values that you can anchor your efforts around. That's really been valuable to us. Our team, we are selfless, tough, and reliable. So no matter what happens during the course of the year, we can always fall back on, are we selfless, tough, and reliable? And the kids know those values. And we talked a lot about them early in the season, and just continue to reinforce those throughout. Again, we can't go crazy deep because you only got, an hour and a half with them most days of the week, and you have a lot to accomplish. But I think having a simple language that you can speak to the kids with, a framework for your team values and what's important, what's acceptable, what's not, and then holding the kids accountable is a great place to start. I said, at a youth level, clearly, as the games get more competitive and you start playing high school sports, varsity sports, and then graduate on to college or go from there, now it's all about winning. But I think the great coaches realize that if they're just focused on the wins and losses, they're not going to be the leader they need to be to have that success in the first place. Who's going to want to follow a leader that just is almost using you as a cog in the wheel or to achieve their goal? It's more than that. And I think the great teams and great coaches, great leaders understand how to connect with their players in their unit on a personal level, bring them together to achieve something that's kind of greater than the game.
I think you're absolutely right, especially if you're starting with values. And I think, gosh, I never had a team that operated under values as a coach, as a player. And I think as a leadership coach, I'm thinking about, how is it that those pieces were never part of my experience? When you listed those three words off, I was drawn in because now everything I do on that team comes back to those values, and anything I do that is out of line with that value, I as a coach can bring you back in and remind you why it's those values. And now it's not personal. It's not, you're not good enough. It takes all of those emotions and identities out of the sport and puts it back into the team. I think that is astounding. And I'm really glad that you shared that. The values are incredible. And we talk about values a lot, but bringing it into the team framework is a no-brainer, and yet so often overlooked.
Yeah, well, I think I can't say I ever had a team that had values growing up either. Or I can't say I ever had a coach that, at least until college, that I felt like really had the time, the interest to really connect with me one-on-one. And even in college, it was few and far between. But I want to give credit here. After college, I worked for a company called The Program, and it was founded by a former Force Recon Marine whose mission was to teach leadership and teamwork to athletic teams initially. Now it's teams in all industries and realms. And those values that I use with my team today were inspired by our values at The Program. And that's when I learned that language. And it was obviously critical in the military to understood what you stood for and why, and then set forth from there. As a leader, you need to know, you can't lead your team effectively if you don't understand your operating system. So those were definitely inspired by the folks at The Program who do some amazing work. And then I'll say I've been further inspired. You mentioned in my opening, I'm fortunate to work for a company called ASUP today, and we're in the leadership development space. So we're working with companies. It's a B2B software, but at the core of it is a network of an amazing group of coaches that we're able to bring into organizations to coach up individual leaders, emerging leaders, or to support teams, all in the effort to help an organization accomplish its mission. Organizations have values today, and oftentimes they're just posters on walls. How do you bring these to life? Well, guess what? It's not HR's issue. It's everyone's in the organization needs to embody and model the behaviors that they want to be known for. And it starts at the top. So that's where a lot of the work that we do with organizations today, I'm the beneficiary of working with a coach. I realize how much more self-aware I am today than I was when I was a teenager or a collegiate athlete. And I want that experience that I didn't have now. And I feel like I'm better equipped now to help provide them that experience. So yeah, for me, it wasn't something that I experienced when I was going through it, but why should that stop me from allowing a better opportunity for those that are coming through the ranks now?
Incredible. I love it. So can you share some lessons that maybe you learned from being coached into what you do when you're coaching the youth that you're coaching? Like, what are you carrying forward, or what were some lessons that you learned when you were being coached?
Man, there is a long list of lessons learned and from coaching today. I think the major lesson I've gotten as an adult in working with my coach is the story we tell ourselves isn't always reality. And having someone actually work with me to question the narrative that they heard me sharing with them and question the validity of it and force me to think about it has helped me understand that I mentioned earlier, I struggled to transition from being an athlete to being a professional, hanging up the cleats. But I didn't know I was struggling with that until probably a couple of years ago. I was just existing. It was what it was. I think I found myself chasing a career in industries that were closely related to athletics. And I worked in the health and fitness field. I worked at the company like The Program. I worked for Reebok. I worked for Exos. I mean, some of these brands are as close as you can get to still being on the field without still being on the field. But all throughout that, I wasn't putting myself in a position to be successful. I wasn't playing to my strengths. And it wasn't until I came to ASUP that I realized really leaned into my strengths of being a relationship builder and being someone who should be on the front lines, client facing, helping lead the discovery process to understand what are the challenges that an organization is facing and how could we help solve those. Anyway, that has been a huge learning, but I think about how I can apply that to the kids today. I mean, I hear them say things. I can't do this. I had a kid tell me at practice the other night, Coach, I learn differently than other kids. I can't, when you talk, I don't listen. I need you to write it down. And that was really helpful for me to hear. And God bless that kid for actually sharing that with me. But I will say, hey, listen, don't sell yourself short, Amias, because I did just explain something to you and I quizzed them. And I said, and you passed my quiz. Like you grasped what I shared with you and I wasn't writing anything down. So don't limit yourself. You're not alone, by the way, where a lot of us are visual learners. Another example would be, I'm afraid I'm going to get hurt. And they just shy away. Well, listen, raise your hand if you're scared out here. And guess what? Every hand on the team went up, including the coaches' hands. We get nervous before games. We're afraid that we're going to not do the best we can for you all. Like everyone's got some fear. So how do we work through that? Well, first of all, the first step is admitting it. And then the second step is, okay, well, if you're afraid you're going to get hurt, let's come up with some new creative drills. We can get you all reps tackling with the right form and technique, and then progress you to the point where you're able to really embrace live contact. So those are some lessons learned just in terms of questioning the narrative you're telling yourself. I'll share one more and then I'll stop because I could go on, but I got some tough feedback about 2 years ago at work. And I remember sharing it with my coach, and I didn't agree with the feedback. I didn't like the way it was shared. I didn't like when it was shared. I didn't like a lot about it. And my coach said, Bryant, got it. What about the feedback you receive can you use? Don't focus on how and why and what about, like, what is useful in it. And I pulled that out and realized that, okay, I was hanging on to who shared it, when they shared it, why they shared it, and I wanted to punch back instead of giving them some grace for caring enough about me to give me the feedback, and to take the nugget that they gave me and thank them and then go from there. And I share that because I'm out on the football field with these 12 and 13-year-olds yelling and barking and screaming at them more than I probably should, and telling them all, hey, have thick skin, take the coaching. If I'm coaching you, it's because I care about you. I want you to get better. And I'm telling them they got to take the coaching, basically take tough feedback all practice long and in games. And here I am being hypocritical, not wanting to take the feedback. So the kids actually taught me a lesson of I need the thick skin that I'm encouraging them to develop. So it goes full circle, Lorraine.
It really does. I wanted to revisit the athletic identity challenge that you had, because it sounds like from even earlier than 9 years old, you were an athlete, but it really became solid around that age. And then from then on, throughout your entire rest of your schooling, you were an athlete and that was your identity. And it was hard to strip yourself of that identity when you left school. So, is there some idea or advice or thoughts that you have to go back and share with your teenage self or current teenagers who see themselves completely as an athlete? Because we know injuries happen, you don't make certain teams. And so you may find yourself becoming that non-athlete sooner than you anticipate, and not having other identities can really hit you. And it sounds like it did for you in terms of like seeking a profession that didn't suit who you were.
Yeah. So let me take you quickly down memory lane here, just because I think it provides the context. I was an athlete, but I was a small late bloomer. I was undersized. I went to a high school where it was very competitive football program, and I didn't play meaningful snaps as a varsity player in high school until I was a senior. But I knew that my senior year was going to be my year to shine, and I did. But by that point, I was still a late bloomer. I probably ran a 5.0 40. That's not fast, if anyone knows 40 times. I was a string bean. I wasn't shaving yet, but I didn't get looked at by many colleges at all. And I lived in New Hampshire, so I walked on at UNH because I knew it was in-state. And I believed that I could play at that level. Why I believe that? I don't know. My parents did a great job of instilling a lot of confidence and belief in us, and I still held out hope that I was going to grow more. And walked on at UNH, and I'll make the story quick, but I made the team. I ended up redshirting my first year, but my sophomore year in school, my redshirt freshman year, I played meaningful time. We won our conference championship. We went to the national playoffs. So I was contributing to a team that people didn't even think I had any business being on. And so that identity was getting even stronger. And then I made a backup on the depth chart, and that earned me a half scholarship. And then ultimately, my senior year, I earned a starting position and a full scholarship. And I'll tell that story proudly to a lot of people. But what I didn't mention is that I was injured my sophomore year, missed the majority of that season, came back, re-injured that same injury my junior year, missed the rest of that season. So by the time I was a starter my senior year, I was not sure I actually, although I accomplished what I did to get there, I wasn't sure I had the confidence to know that I could really step into that role that I've seen others step into. And I struggled mightily my senior year. 3 games into the year, my coach demoted me, and I'm not proud to admit this, Lorraine, but I sulked the rest of the season. I couldn't wait for that season to be over and just felt bad for myself and wanted it to end. So that was the end of my athletic career, or at least my football career. And I think as I look back now and I think about kids that might go through that, or what I would experience was I wanted it to be over in some respects because I just wanted this pain to stop, but I never dealt with it. And now to look back and realize, and this took me some time, that because my career was tainted by the way it ended, I wouldn't pull forward. I wasn't really leaning into all that allowed me to get to that place in the first place. The ability to walk on and do something that people didn't think I had any right to do, and to put in the work to rise up the depth chart and to earn playing time ahead of scholarship players and to compete. I was really proud of what I had accomplished. So what I needed to do, what I would encourage anyone else to do, is don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Recognize that those skills and those attributes and that character that was developed in that process, if you find something that you're passionate about in life, all of that's still there. And guess what? You've trained that muscle and you can use that to be successful in anything else that you can do. It's just putting yourself in the right position. So it took me a while to get there, but I absolutely am passionate about helping others do it and hopefully do it, more quickly than I did.
I think you bring up such valid experiences because I don't think there's any one person who can say my path to athleticism or my path on this team was without turmoil and challenge. And also very likely that as teenagers, you don't get to a position of popularity or athleticism without turmoil. And yet, when we look out and tell ourselves that story, it's not often based in reality, as you alluded to earlier. So I appreciate so much of not only you sharing the story, but the ability for you to now look back and see all the work and all of the progress that you were able to accomplish along the way was almost lost because of the way that you ended and left the sport. And I think, gosh, it's so often that we discount so much of the path and the journey, and yet we couldn't be where we are without it.
You're right. And hearing you say that makes me think about a skill that all the great athletes and all the great professionals, anyone who's achieved any amount of success in their craft, has to have an insane amount of resiliency. They're the ones that got knocked down and got back up and continued to get back up. It's not that it came easy to them. It's not that they were just like this gifted individual. Yes, some people have gifts in different areas and we should all use those, but anyone who's pursuing greatness is going to be challenged and should be knocked down. It's the folks that continue to get back up, to develop that ability to bounce back and to embrace the failure as just another step in their progress in a learning opportunity. Those are the folks that are going to be successful. So that's why I think when you think about sports being such a great breeding ground for lessons learned and skills, it's that. I mean, you go out and you fail repeatedly.
Yeah.
And you get accustomed to not losing, but just how to adapt, how to come back, how to get smarter, and how to compete. And man, that is such an amazing opportunity. And I think if athletes can be taught to embrace that at a young age, I don't think they'll be so hard on themselves. And I think see a lot of athletes quitting sports today because everyone's getting specialized and focused and earlier. And it's like, well, if you're not doing X by this point in time, well, maybe that's not for me. It's just, I think there's this desire for this immediate gratification, and that's perpetuated by media and social media. But it's a shame because I think kids can miss out on the real pride they can develop by knowing they didn't give up and they stuck to it and accomplished something, whatever that is.
That makes me think about a lot of things. I think about when you were sharing about sulking, how much time I spent sulking when I wasn't getting the playing time that I thought I deserved. And how then when I was a coach, I tried to give equal playing time, and that didn't really solve the challenge and how we bring some of the experiences that we had being coached or being an athlete into the coaching realm in which we are now operating. And is there anything that you would share with yourself about the way that you were coached in different times of your athletic career that might have helped you understand what was happening? Or was there anything that you wish you could have said to a coach that you didn't have the courage to say?
Two things. One, I recognize that no matter how much you, I don't know if you can relate to this, Lorraine, but we all are a sum of our experiences.
Yes.
So I hear myself yell and scream and rant at practice, and I'm like, I don't think this ever worked for me. But what am I must be getting something out of this right now because I don't know if they are. So I think I would tell myself, and I'm fortunate to have an assistant coach now who's good to get in my ear and be like, hey, let's just take a different approach here. So there's that. Listen, none of us are perfect. And yes, we deserve a pat in the back if we're volunteering to be out there. Yes, but you also have a responsibility to not just be an adult chaperone. You have an opportunity to really make an impression on kids' lives and their development. So support them and challenge them, and in that order and in the appropriate amounts. So that's kind of like where I think I still need to grow and develop. And then I think something missing from what I wish I had more of as an athlete growing up was that coach that would, and it could have been from the walk from the field to the bus after practice, put your arm around my shoulder and tell me, hey, you can do better at this. Or, hey, you made a great play here. Here's how you can take it to the next level. Or, hey, I just want to let you know I'm seeing how hard you're working and keep it up because it's going to pay off. Or whatever it was, just the recognition, I think, can put some wind in someone's sails. And it's, again, the larger the teams, it's hard to do. It's not easy, but I think the great coaches find a way to make that, I call it, connection as best they can with their team. And I'm making a mental note of it as we talk right here, Lorraine, where my team's coming up on the midway point of our season. I think it's time that I have a sit down with each of our players, and I'll have to find the time to do that. But it'd also be a chance for them to see that, hey, this angry, scary guy that yells and screams a lot, remember him? He also cares about you. And you won't lose them. When you do yell at them, they're going to be there with you because they know, hey, this is the same guy that put his arm around my shoulder the other day. I'm going to hang in there with him because he's trying hard too.
Yeah, I love that you bring that up because you also alluded to before you became an athlete that you were the lost middle child. And at the time, I wasn't thinking of within your family structure, but I see many students who are looking for that recognition, who are looking for that acknowledgement that they are trying. Whether they're the best on the team or not, it very much aligns with the message that I'm trying to create is that I see you and I know you feel invisible because you're good enough and you do what I ask you to do. And so you're not a problem and you're not the best. And so that lost middle child is not just within a family structure. That lost middle child is our middle students, is our middle team
Yep.
players. And I love that you are making that one of the things that you're going to try and do in the middle of the season because the power that connection has for a kid who has yet not been seen by somebody can change the direction of their life. And it's seemingly minor from our perspective, right? I just said something nice to that person, or I just acknowledged the effort that they were putting in. But for some kids, it has the power to open up opportunities that they never could have seen before. And so very excited that you that you're making that note, and not that it's something that you wouldn't have done otherwise, but that you're recognizing that now and going to put it into actions. Exciting.
Yeah, well, I think, listen, I'm making it a note because I don't think I do a good enough job with it. And I can even think about, I coach my son now, and I see the potential in him, and I see a lot of myself in him, and that can get complicated.
Yeah.
And there's not just being dad and coach, but it's like I see a young me in him. I want to help him realize the potential that he has. And we had a conversation the other day, and I was like, Bud, I realized that's what I want. What do you want? What did you want when you started this season? And what do you want now? And I'll credit the coaching that I've gotten that allowed me to kind of step out of this cycle that I was in with
Yeah.
him and just ask a question. And he said, I want to prove to myself that I'm as tough as anyone on the field. And I said, great. Now, I don't know if that's truly what he wants or if that's what he thinks I want. I mean, I said, you are. You just need to be able to prove it. And we're going to work with you to get there. Like, that's our goal. You're a receiver. I don't care if you catch passes or touchdowns. My goal for you now is your goal, which is to help you develop the courage that you're going to need to prove that on the field. Anyway, but I think I bring that up because I'm not, I think a lot of what we grew up with, Lorraine, I imagine it
Mhm.
wasn't much different. Yeah, there's the middle. You end up coaching the best and you end up yelling and screaming at the laggards so that they get the majority of your time. It's the folks in the middle don't get enough. And we need to break that cycle. But then there's also like, you don't want to give out the compliments too quick because you don't want to like set a low bar. Well, when are you going to give out the compliment? Because they're working really hard. And if you don't give it out, they might just stop. They might be like, what the F? Like, why am I continuing
Right,
to try?
right.
I'm not getting recognized. So I think the communication has to be often, and it can't always be individual, especially on larger teams, but keep the communication coming so you recognize enough collectively and hopefully individually that kids don't get deterred. And yeah, I think err on the side of that pat on the back is going to motivate them and inspire them, not lead to complacency.
Yeah. Well, and I think so much of your son not answering for himself potentially, but if you keep asking him what he wants, eventually he's going to have to decide what he wants and not necessarily parrot back what he thinks. And the same thing is true about you saying the communication. Like, yeah, it's not going to work. It's not going to be the best the first time you do it, but you're going to get better at it. And I just think there's so much value in putting yourself in that discomfort that we're asking our young people to be in, right? So I, as a teacher, didn't ever want my students to know I was making mistakes, or I didn't want them to know that I didn't have a backup plan, or my backup plan was in place. And I think so often I was trying to mitigate all of that. And the message I was sending was that you can't make mistakes in this class because Miss Connell's not making any mistakes. And so, like, stepping into the role of offering a pat on the back shows your team that it's okay to do that. And maybe it's not going to always have to come from you now. Maybe it's them recognizing the pat on the back to give to each other. And so, modeling is going to lead to a better environment and culture, which is ultimately what it sounds like you're looking for.
Yeah. And so hearing you just talk about the environment that you wanted to create and not this one of perfection where you can't make mistakes, you brought me back to your earlier question and what I wish I had the courage to have asked my coach in college that I didn't. And when I talk about the failure, it's not about football. It's
No.
about how I handled the demotion. And I think about what I wish I could get a do-over on is how I handled that. Instead of sulking, I wish I had gone to my coach and just asked him why I got demoted and what I need to do to earn my job back. And I had the confidence and the belief in myself to do that. However, it would have played out,
Yeah.
I would have been proud of how I handled it. And if my kid and one of my players or my kid comes to me like, Dad, coach demoted me, I also want to be able to give them some better advice than I hope they share it with me. And B, when they do, give them good advice on how to handle it. And it's an opportunity for them to be their own advocate and to really lead in that moment. And so I look back and I regret that I just kind of sulk and I'll show them, just
Mm.
useless response. And I wasn't being a good leader. I wasn't being a good teammate. So I would encourage athletes and maybe some of the folks that you coach, Lorraine, when things don't go the way they want and they don't like the way that they're being coached, to have the courage to go talk to your coach. Your coach is a human too. They're probably a parent. They will respond because I'll tell you, it's not common for a kid to have the courage to come talk to a coach. So show the coach that you're remarkable in that way, and I guarantee you'll get a response from them that will be useful. However it plays out, you'll be proud that you took control of the situation. So that would be a big lesson learned that I would hope to embark and pass on to others.
And I hear you saying that, and I also reflect that as a coach, it's probably a lot harder to have a conversation with the athlete that you're demoting rather than demoting them and waiting for them to come talk to you. I think it takes a lot of courage as a coach to face what you're doing to the kids on your team and say, here's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I would love to have a conversation with you if you don't understand. And I know that I, as a coach, did a lot of, well, I'm just the coach. You don't have to question me in a lot of the early years of my coaching. And listening to you share, I wish I had the courage to talk to my coach, just reflects to me how, if I had the courage as a coach to engage in that conversation first, it wouldn't have relied on you to have the courage to do that. And yes, there's a little bit of like both and,
Yeah.
but also I think being the coach that opens that conversation is really a great place to be.
Yeah, I think the lesson for everybody is if it feels uncomfortable, you maybe try leaning into that discomfort instead of your instinctual reaction to maybe move away from it might not serve you well.
Yeah. And that's an incredible place to end because I think that advice is paramount for all of us. So, Brian, can you tell people how they can connect with you or where they can find more information about ASAP?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not on social media, any social media platform except for LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I do try to put out some value in the world. So I'll often post on my experiences coaching youth athletes or having been an athlete and how that applies to the world of leadership and the business world today. So you can follow me for more of that. But if you're a leader in an organization or you lead a team or you're trying to develop greater leadership within your organization because the business needs more of that, I'd love to talk about how we can support your leaders and your teams to really help move the needle for the organization. Yeah, so LinkedIn, and you can catch me at asup.com as well.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for this conversation. I learned a lot.
Lorraine, I did as well. And thank you for the work that you do. I wish I had known you when I was a teen, and I'm sure you wish someone like you was around then. But hey, continue to pay it forward, and
Yeah.
you are making a huge difference. So thank you.
Are you ready to help the young people in your life unlock their inner strength and step confidently into leadership? The new workbook from Peers Not Fears, Your Voice Matters, Uncovering Your Unique Leadership. It's designed to help teens see the leader in themselves, step by step. It's not just a workbook. It's the first step towards a ripple effect that could change lives. Let's turn today's teens into tomorrow's titans. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Leaders of Today, Teens to Titans. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with other parents who might benefit from this conversation. Together, we can support our teens in building healthy, positive relationships and become leaders of tomorrow. Until next time, I'm Lorraine Connell, and this is Leaders of Today, Teens to Titans.